Howdy, it's Tubalcain. I'm going to start kind of a big project today, replacing the axle seal on my Minneapolis MOLINE Jetstar. This is a 1961 model and really runs good and everything is good except that they all leak oil in a few places, so I'm going to try to get this seal in. And I have already done the other side, so I consider myself at least a minor expert on this. This job will be the same probably if you have a 4-star or a Mighty Mow or a Big Mow, I think it's called, and maybe some other MOLINE tractors. But first thing we're going to do is to take the wheel off and drain some oil out. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, I've got the wheel off and in storage temporarily, and now you can see the hub. Notice how I've got it jacked up. I've got like a heavy-duty black jack stand there under the axle, and then I still keep my hydraulic jack under the hitch there for safety, so I kind of have it double jacked. And over on the other side I got the wheels chocked, and then at the present time my garage is off limits to my grandkids because you just can't work safely enough. Now I'm going to drain oil, and then I'm going to take the hub off. The seals and the bearings are in here. The seal's way out at the end. I'm going to replace the bearings while I'm at it. All the bearings are bad in these old tractors when you examine them. They're always pitted. So those bearings are going to come out because they're in the way of the seals anyway. So they really need to come out. Pretty hard to take them out without damaging them. So I've already got them on order. I hope I'm not going into too much detail, but I sure wish I would have had a video like this to watch before I started the other side. Now I've got all 4 of these bolts loosened, and now I'm ready to take the hub off. And of course, as you know, on this old stuff nothing comes off easily, and so when I did the other side I constructed this puller, just welded up steel with there's a nut back here, and this is a 7/8 rod, and we're putting the big old 3/4 drive on there, and got another pry bar here to hold it from turning, and it'll come off quite readily this way. But I don't like to beat on something like this because it is cast iron, and you break that off with a big hammer, and then what do you got? So take the time to construct something or borrow a puller. I have one other puller here, pretty good size, that I'm going to use later on. That probably also would have worked for this operation. Okay, we got the hub off. I will clean that up real good and even paint it before I put it back on. This project is going to take me all week, especially as I have to film it as I go along. Here's another look at that puller that I made. It's just made up out of 5/16 plate steel with a nut on the back, 7/8 nut, and these are welded on just to strengthen it or keep it from flexing. Now this is the bearing housing, and the actual oil leak is right under here. I'm rubbing some oil off of there right now. The seal is right inside here. Right inside there. You can even see a little bit of the seal from here. So the next thing I'm going to do is take off the bearing housing, and I've already marked that. Always mark things so you can put them back together exactly the same way. You don't want to damage anything. Consider these things to be priceless antiques. I do. And I don't want to damage anything or make it worse than when I began the job. Okay, I'm going to remove the last 2 bolts from the bearing housing. I got a bucket under there in case any oil comes out, and as you can see it is gushing out. Probably be a couple quarts in there, even though I've drained out quite a bit. Here's the bearing housing. And do not lose these shims or mix them up. You'll need those when you put it back together. There's also a gasket here, and this gasket is torn. So I'll have to make one. I don't know if I can buy them. Here's the bearing, the roller bearing cone, and right here is a sleeve that the seals ride on. That has to come off too. And I'm also going to polish the axle real good, like that, all the way around when I get that bearing off of there. Okay, first we'll turn our attention to the bearing housing. And I don't believe you're going to be able to see it, but in there is the bearing cup, like this. There's the old one from the other side. And it blocks the exit of the seal. So we have to mutilate this. I'd like to get the bearing out first, but there is no good way to do it. To get a punch on it or anything, or a puller. So I'm going to remove the seal first and then knock the bearing out. This is the old seal from the other side, and you can see it's quite a wide seal, and there's some felt here, and there's a spring seal, and I had to totally mutilate it to get it out of there. That is to say, I used both a punch and I used an old wood chisel to slit it so I could fold it and bend it enough to get it out of there. Then I'm able to get at the bearing cup with a punch and get it out. So this is rather laborious. When you do this, be careful you don't damage the casting, so that we end up with leaks where oil can get around the seal or around the bearing. So use a little discretion when you do this. This particular operation is not real easy to do, but again, the bearing sits in there like this with the seal on top of it. The seal is outboard. Since you can't get these seals anymore, I'm going to use two seals, two national seals. Probably one would do, but I'm going to use two as long as I got this apart. There's plenty of room for two, because you can see how thick this seal is. All right, now I'm going to do the job. I'm not going to show it on camera because it'll be too long. Okay, I got the seal out. My son-in-law is sitting here laughing at me, and that's what kept me from swearing, because he's a man that doesn't use foul language. But you can see how I had to mutilate that thing with a chisel to get it out of there, and it was not easy. But it did take only about 15 minutes. So now I'm going to take the bearing cup itself out and use an old chisel, an old punch rather, that you can spare, because the bearing is hardened and you will chip or damage the punch. Be sure and wear your safety glasses. Okay, I've got the bearing cup out of there, and I did that by pounding with the chisel like this and working my way around. You're really coming in at quite an angle with your punch, but it did come loose and out of there in 3-4 minutes. So, but I don't think this is going to show up on the screen here, but this is incredibly pitted right here. So we did have a bad bearing, and remember, you never replace just one part of a bearing. That is, you're going to replace always the cone and the cup. So I have already ordered the bearings, and they'll be here in a couple days, and then I'm going to show you how to press in the seals and then press in this bearing.